Good morning and welcome to Pittsburgh City Council for Tuesday, June 7th, 2022. The first order of business, the clerk will please call the roll.
Mr. Coghill, Ms. Gross.
Here.
Mr. Kraus. Mr. Lavelle. Here. Mr. O'Connor. Ms. Strasburger.
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Mrs. Kell Smith. Reverend Burgess, Chair.
Here.
6 members present.
Thank you very much. That gives us a quorum. If you would all stand with me, face the flag, and we will do a pledge of allegiance followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lord, protect our babies and give us peace. You may sit down. The first order of business is a motion to amend the agenda to add Bill 2022-0442 to the agenda sponsored by myself. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
So moved, Councilman.
I need a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or nay. That takes us to the regular resolutions part of the agenda. We have several resolutions, all to be read into the record. Madam Clerk.
Councilman O'Connor presents Bill number 435. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the City of Pittsburgh does hereby recognize and commend Greenfield School for its 100-year-old anniversary for being noted as one of Pittsburgh's most architecturally significant schools for the progressiveness of its design, with the interior of the entrance lobby with its geometric and foliated capitals as the highlight of the design. Mr. O'Connor also presents Bill number 436. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the City of Pittsburgh does hereby recognize and commend Hazelwood Center of Life and Andrea Coleman for the teamwork, coordination, and collaboration needed to create inclusion for all members of the community, and congratulates Center of Life for being an example to all of the meaning of equity and inclusion. Councilman Kraus presents Bill number 439. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the City of Pittsburgh does hereby recognize Beth Tarassi for the inspiration that she is and commends her for her efficacy, wisdom, and passion for advocating for the residents of the City of Pittsburgh. And be it further resolved that the Council of the City of Pittsburgh does hereby declare Friday, June 10th, 2022 to be Beth Tarassi Day in the City of Pittsburgh. Councilman Kraus also presents Bill number 440. Be it further resolved that the Council of the City of Pittsburgh does hereby declare Tuesday, June 7th, 2022 to be Frank B. Furrer Day in the City of Pittsburgh. And Councilman Kraus also presents Bill number 441. Be it further resolved that the Council of the City of Pittsburgh does hereby declare the month of June 2022 to be Pride Month in the City of Pittsburgh.
You've heard the resolutions. Is there a motion on the resolutions?
Motion to approve, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any conversation? Seeing no conversation, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. All right. That brings us to public comment. I want to remind everyone that the rules of council state that comments should be limited to matters of concern, official actions, or deliberation, which are or may be before council. That is, if we are not going to vote on it or potentially vote on it, it should not be a part of the public comment testimony. Profanity will not be permitted. Now, we have some registered speakers. They will go first. After that, we will give members of the audience a time to speak. Our first registered speaker is Lacey Ecker. Lacey, are you with us?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Please start off with your name and neighborhood, and you will be given 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Lacey Ecker. I'm a resident on the border of Mount Washington and Allentown. I live on Belts Hoover Avenue. and I am here to talk about gun violence in the city. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I think it's no secret if you turn on any of our local news stations, literally any day these days, we hear about gun violence. I'm particularly concerned because a lot of the victims seem to be children getting younger by the week. Just to name a couple that I'm sure we're all aware of, in my neighborhood on Warrington Avenue, there were three teenagers shot on Warrington Avenue a couple weeks ago. One is dead. There was a very large mass shooting at the Airbnb on the north side. 2 teenagers were killed and 8 teenagers were shot. And then tragically, an 18-month-old child was shot and killed in downtown Pittsburgh on a Sunday afternoon. You all provide a lot of public statistics. In 2022 alone, there have been 916 shots fired, 65 aggravated assaults with a firearm, 34 non-fatal shootings, and 17 homicides as of March 30th, 2022, which doesn't include any of the Allentown or downtown or East Carson Street shootings that we've seen more recently. 94% of these shootings, 94% of these crimes of those homicides involve a gun. I was disappointed. I was happy to hear that Mayor Ed Gainey released a plan for peace, but I was disappointed in the lack of focus on guns in that plan. Where was the proposal for a gun buyback program? The last one that happened in the city was in January of 2021. A church in Homewood did it. They raised the money themselves. It was only $5,000, and they ran out of money in the first 40 minutes. It made national news. This city got $335 million in funds from the American Rescue Plan. 10 million of that was earmarked for health and safety. 2 million of that was earmarked for public safety. If you just put $1 million towards a gun buyback program at $100 a gun, which we know people will bring, we've seen it from prior programs, that's 10,000 guns off of our streets. I also want to talk about East Carson Street. Something has to be done down in the South Side. I used to live in the South Side. I now live in Mount Washington, and it's all of that is Zone 3. I mean, you can't go down there. It's every single weekend. This weekend alone, somebody was shot outside Cambodia Kitchen again. The next night, 2 more people were shot outside Gennaro's. In Miami, they shut down Ocean Drive. They put crowd control gates up. They put watchtowers. They illuminate the whole place. And they do security checks in order to get onto Ocean Drive. Maybe it's time to do something like that between 12th and 18th on East Carson Street. It's getting extremely dangerous. We already had 2 mass shootings in this city in recent history, one at Tree of Life and the Airbnb shooting. We don't want to have another one. I can't take another one. I don't want us to be the next site of a school shooting. So we need to do something. Like Mayor Gainey said last Friday, these are our children. This is our city. You guys are our city council. I need you guys to do something. We have funding. We need to find funding if we don't have it right now, but we need to get more of these guns off the street.
Our next speaker is Naomi Mullen. Naomi.
Good morning. Shady trees, not shady deals in Bonaire. Our signatures against reapportionment prove it's a no from the Bonaire community. We want to remain in the district we've been in. Reapportionment would harm us. I'm going to read a letter that was from the Veteran Firefighters Association, and it was also read at my husband's funeral. Michael J. Mullen, Reflection, by Battalion Chief Douglas Praskovich. Retired Deputy Chief Mike Mullen touched the lives of many people. His uncompromising dedication to his sworn duty to provide for the safety of the citizens of Pittsburgh was truly exceptional, and then what should be emulated by every firefighter. He loved sharing his knowledge of firefighting in all its many aspects to make our firefighters safer, smarter, and more efficient on the fire ground. Mike knew most of the firefighters on the entire Pittsburgh Bureau of Fire by their first name and was always approachable regardless of rank. If you had a question, he would stop what he was doing to answer it. He worked tirelessly but also energetically his entire career in pursuit of more knowledge. His legacy will serve our citizens and firefighters for years to come. Mike was a loving and compassionate husband, father, brother, relative, and friend. Michael J. Mullen lived a full life, as his obituary so accurately described. Mike was passionate, tireless, dedicated, highly conscientious, and caring. Well done, Michael. Well done. Rest in peace, my friend. We, the people of Bon Air, have maintained our properties, and we don't want to see harmful things happen to our neighborhood, like in the South Side. Putting apartment buildings into our neighborhood would increase the chances of the violence that's occurring in other neighborhoods. It would not fit in our neighborhood as well. The Michael Mullen Memorial Green Space is the solution for the peace, safety, and happiness of our community. Michael is now one of the watchers, helping from the other side. Shady trees, not shady deals in Bon Air. Thank you.
That brings us to Dr. Ronald Lynn Miller. Dr. Miller.
Dr. Ronald Lynn Miller, Belsuver, Indianapolis, Indiana. Jerusalem, Israel. I'm a Global Intelligence Society U.S. National Candidate 2024 for the presidency. Dr. Ron Lynn Miller at Dr. Ron Lynn Miller 1, Twitter account. The states of Israel and Palestine are key in my work in international studies, which is 1/21 of what we call global studies. University of Oxford, St. Cross College, Center for Jewish Studies. I am not Jewish. It has to do with what I recognize, and many who have worked with me recognize, as an objectively important situation and nation in the world. University of Pittsburgh, I have been an instructor in modern Israel many times. I won the Israel Heritage Fellowship. I went to the Central Zionist Archives and the Theodore Herzl Archives in Jerusalem, Israel. And I must tell you that on my first bus ride in Jerusalem to the CZA, I was shocked, that's an understatement, to see sitting just a few seats away from me, an IDF, an Israel Defense Force soldier with a machine gun. And we learned that that is routine. It was routine, and it is routine. They use guns in Israel, and that's a metaphor for a lot of other things, as a deterrence. My view of this is, I have two ways of looking at it, but that is precisely what the Israeli basic approach is to this. It is very similar to the way that Israelis treat how do you get on an airline. It took me 3 hours to get out of Israel, as they really go over everything. And there are guns, people with guns, IDF people with guns, all over the place. Now, I'm running out of time, so I'm going to come back to this tomorrow. But a concern of this city and this council is with family. Now, I want to ask you, without trying to intimidate you or embarrass you, counselors, do you own a gun? Do any of you don't have to answer me, but consider this, that there are many of us who own guns, who want to own guns to protect our families, to protect our children. So just getting rid of guns isn't the solution.
David Vatz. Mr. Vatz, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good morning.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Dave Batts. I'm a resident of Coral Hill, and I'm here to speak in opposition to the historic designation of the Tito House. Historic designation is important for true landmarks, but in this case, we preserve an unimportant house that the city's own historic review commission has said should not be designated as historic, and will be an impediment to the development of desperately needed affordable housing with access to jobs, transit, and education. Councilperson Lavelle, please do not support the historic designation. I'm sure you've heard from people in your district that the city's own historic review commission did not find the property to be worth saving. Instead, I urge you to consider the 14 families who could live in your district and the proposed affordable housing on the site. Madam Burgess, do not let the traditions of council allow this historic designation to pass without opposition. It's each council person's moral duty to ensure that housing can be built in their districts. And historic designation is frequently used as a tool by NIMBYs to prevent development in their district. Councilpersons Strasburger, Kraus, and Gross, if we designate structures as historic in other districts, this will only serve to shift more development burden into your constituencies. Historic designation should protect truly remarkable structures of great historic significance and should not be used as a tool to prevent development. Do not let the traditions of council provide a rubber stamp for this action. Our city desperately needs new housing. Each time we designate a parcel as historic, we eliminate the ability for the owners of those parcels to ensure they are placed their highest and best use. Prices continue to rise in Pittsburgh, both for rentals and for sale property, and our most vulnerable residents are quickly getting priced out. To solve this, we must do one thing: make it simple to build new housing, particularly if they include an affordable element. Historic designation prevents that from happening. And in this case, could single-handedly derail 280 new homes per resident, including forcing designated as affordable. I urge you, members of council, to please reject the historic designation of the Tito's house. Thank you.
Next up is Kelsey Leonard.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, my name is Kelsey Leonard, and I'm a resident of Greenfield. I'm here to speak in opposition as well to the historic designation of the Tito's house, which will be an impediment to critical development of new housing in an area ripe for transit, jobs, and education. Pittsburgh is at an inflection point. We can decide to be a city that welcomes new housing and new development in order to keep prices in check, particularly for our most vulnerable residents. Building new housing is the only proven way to keep housing prices down and create opportunities for these vulnerable residents to have a roof over their heads and build wealth. Unfortunately, many cities in the country have taken a different route. Obstruction of new housing is the name of the game, leading to massive amounts of displacement and the greatest burden falling on those with the lowest income. San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, Boston, and other cities have all seen this happen. Sadly, we're seeing the same thing happen in Pittsburgh. We've had decades of underinvestment of housing in the city, and we build the least amount of housing in Pittsburgh of any major metro area. It's no surprise then that we're now seeing prices rise and our most vulnerable residents displaced. As someone who studied history at the University of Pittsburgh, I'm no stranger to the importance of preserving historic sites. However, given that the Pittsburgh Historic Review Commission has ruled that the Tito House does not meet historic designation of the Tito's house is simply another means to obstruct housing progress. Historic designation creates stagnant neighborhoods and ensures disinvestment. It prevents critical affordable housing from being built. Please, please don't let this prevent critical housing progress for people who need it most. Councilperson Lavelle, please reject this designation. Your vote is critical as the property resides in your district. Please consider the 14 or more families who will live in your district if you instead allow development to go forward, especially the residents of the proposed affordable housing. Other members of council, you all have a duty to the city of Pittsburgh. The residents of our city are struggling with housing costs because we do not build enough new housing. Allowing obstruction like this will only increase the burden on our residents. You have the power to end this. Please reject the action to designate Tito's house as a historic landmark.
Thank you very much. That takes us to Alina Zaitzoff.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. We can hear you.
Great. Good morning, council members. I'm Elena Zaitzoff. I've lived in the Oak Cliff neighborhood of South Oakland for 42 years. I'm here today to talk about ordinance 2021-1906, the Walnut Capital rezoning of part of Oakland. On October 13th, City Council voted to send it to the Planning Commission. At that meeting, Councilman Kraus said City Council would work diligently on it for the people of Oakland. It doesn't appear that has happened, as in the transfer of the legislation from paragraphs to having numbers fitting into the zoning code, the preservation of the Isles facade was omitted. It's also not in the public benefits agreement between Mayor Gainey and Walnut Capital. What else has been omitted or added? Who's looking at it line by line? I realize this meeting doesn't allow for questions to be answered, but I'm asking them anyway in the hope you will consider them. At that same meeting, President Cale Smith said she doesn't want to see stalled development with holes in the ground as happened in her district. Well, that is exactly what Walnut Capital has left on 5th Avenue at Halkett, where they built their signature building. They tore down buildings, dug a foundation, then sold the property to Pitt. The hole has remained for over a year, and who knows how much longer it will be there. The public benefits agreement allows for Zulema Street to be closed when a left turn is added. This was no doubt put in there to appease Oak Cliff residents. However, it illustrates the fact that there is no understanding of the intersection at Bates and the Boulevard of the Allies. Coltart residents will still be unable to reach the boulevard going east, and Squirrel Hill residents will still be unable to turn down Bates if Zulema Street is closed. Where is the diligence traffic concerns require? Has anyone checked that Zulema Park is being rezoned as park? Has anyone asked what is in this ordinance for your constituents that isn't obtainable with current zoning? Because there is plenty in it for Walnut Capital, who largely wrote it. We all have fatigue over this ordinance, largely because of the process it was permitted to take. Please don't vote to pass it just because you want it over with. And please don't tell us, oh, it can be changed later, because that puts the burden of change on the residents. Oakland residents deserve better, as this ordinance will have permanent negative effects on us. Thank you.
All right, that exhausts our registered speakers. Now that brings us to our speakers who are in the chambers. First speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Yvonne F. Brown. I live in the Hill District. Citizens, I did not step in front of the other citizens. They didn't want to get up and speak, so I'm speaking first. I wanted to say on Thursday, June the 2nd, it was the birthday of the little girl. She's now 8. When she was 5, and you said she had no right to speak down here. Okay, but they had a rally for Gerald Thompson, the victims and survivors. This man died in the jail here. The family was talking about when he died, that over in this jail that we have, do you know they are serving feces to the prisoners? They are also serving half-cooked mouse in macaroni. They showed us the plates of food. The food is running together. They're saying this, they have millions of dollars in the commissary. We believe that they're serving this food so that they would buy the commissary, because they won't eat it, the prisoners. I can speak from my son saying, Mommy, when he was in jail, he said, Mommy, they leave meat sitting out all night. He was saying it's the wonder some of them haven't died from the food that they eat. Now, I went because of this family said we're white. I did. And then they ended up going to for the jail, the warden. They're having a meeting. Fitzgerald don't even come, but he can come over here whenever Yin's giving proclamation. He can go to the high schools and brag about what he's doing, but he won't go to the hearings for the prisoners. Yins need to go to these hearings and actually hear how they're treating the people. I don't care what they've done, they are still human beings. They are innocent until proven guilty. A young fella came, a little young fella, he looked like he was in his 20s. limping. And I thought he was limping. No, he had lost his leg in this prison. Do you understand? Citizens, they are treating them like they are inhuman, second-class citizens. But when they come out, they come back out to us. The guns, I can remember when Miss Carlisle, no, it was Orly Carroll and Betty Lane had a hearing about guns. The only one out of 9 councilmen was Miss Carlisle. She only stayed 10 minutes. Peduto was a councilman then. He didn't bother coming. Do you understand? When we come down here and try to tell you about what's happening, you're talking amongst yourself, and you, Miss Gross, are you having any kind of fear with any of these councilmen? Because whenever we're talking, they're running to you. Are you having anything that you shouldn't be doing with them for them to actually get to come to you all the time? Tell me. There's got to be something.
So normally I don't say anything about public comment. First of all, though, I will apologize to the members for the insults that have occurred in the past and have obviously occurred today. Second of all, I spent 7 years embedded in the county jail, 5 directly, 2 ex-auxiliary, and ran programs specifically with the commissary. That is not true in terms of the food being served at the Allegheny County Jail. I say that because there are people who have loved ones there, and they should not be in fear that their loved ones somehow are mistreated. I'm sorry that in public comment we have untrue statements and vicious statements by unwell people. But I will say to you directly, those things are not true. Next speaker, please.
Morning, Council. First of all, I want to thank you on behalf of the Black Political Empowerment Project 2201 Wiley Avenue 15219 for the legislative effort that's being proposed to deal with stop and frisk. It's extremely important that officers who stop people be required to list why they're stopping them and to alert the public as to why they're being stopped. When I was in school, and probably all of you feel the same way, you may not have studied as much as you studied if you didn't have a grade you were seeking to get, right? So my point is, for officers, if they are required to list why they're stopping someone, they are more likely to not stop people for inappropriate reasons. So this legislation is extremely important. You all received a letter. I want to read it into the record to our mayor and to all of our council members. I received today, being yesterday, some new and additional recommendations from Dr. Ralph Bangs since our BPEP letter of June 2nd, which was last week. As I stated last week, Dr. Ralph Bangs has been known for decades for the legendary research at the University of Pittsburgh on social and political issues. Once again, I remind each of you that Dr. Bangs is the former Associate Director of the Center on Race, Social Problems, School of Social Work, Research Associate, University Center for Social and Urban Research, University of Pittsburgh Associate Editor of Race and Social Problems Journal. I say that to say he's not just someone at a diner. When Dr. Bangs has done what he's done since the letter we sent last week, suggestions with regard to proposed stop and frisk legislation to provide an analysis of the court decision of Floyd versus City of New York and the court-appointed monitor's report of May 6th this year, 2022, which suggests that nearly all stop and frisk have ended in New York City. So I realize there's some resistance here to passing a bill that's more complete, but I ask mainly that you accept the suggestions of Dr. Bangs, put them in the bill, hold up the vote, make it a legislation that we can all be proud of and that will actually create the results that we seek. The New York model shows it can be done and shows it should be done. So Dr. Ralph Bangs is here personally to share with you some key points. Dr. Ralph Bangs.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Council. I'm Ralph Bangs from Stanton Heights here in the city. And I appreciate Tim sending you all my final draft, and I'm sorry that I didn't get it together sooner, but I only found out last week that you were considering this legislation. And I put together as much information as I could. The final draft that Tim sent you yesterday, I think it was, is based on two very well-known and excellent legal documents. One is the very one that Tim mentioned, the most famous stop and frisk court decision in American history probably is the district court decision in 2013 called Floyd versus City of New York. And that court decision caused the City of New York to adopt many new policing policies and practices. And that court also appointed a monitor for the court to monitor implementation and outcomes from those changes in policies and practices. And the latest monitoring report, which came out May 6th of this year, shows that stop and frisk incidents in the City of New York declined by 97% from 2013 to this year. And that report is done quarterly, I think, for the district court. And the problem with stop and frisk before was that the police did not have reasonable suspicion and were stopping people because they were black or they were in a high crime area, but those individuals, they did not have evidence that those, or information that those individuals that they stopped had actually committed a crime or were about to commit a crime. And the second document that I based these reports, my final draft on, is the U.S. Department of Justice investigation of the Newark Police Department. And that report came out in 2014 and documented the pedestrian stop problems and the lack of protection of constitutional rights for citizens in Newark. And the same problem, lack of constitutional right protection in New York City was documented in the district case, district court decision. So just a couple of comments. I made many suggestions for city legislation. Let me just make a few basic ones right now on your current proposal. One is that stop and frisk are actually separate police actions, and they should be defined separately, and they need separate probable suspicion, reasonable suspicion definitions. So that's one suggestion I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And although I may say it later, Dr. Baines, you are a treasure to this city, and I'm grateful and have been strongly influenced by your work. I think you know that already, but God bless you. Next speaker, please.
Okay, hi. I'm Wanda Guthrie. I live at 5815 Hayes Street. I'm a member of the Quaker Working Group Against Racism and a member of Saving Lives and Keeping the Peace. I want to thank you, Councilman Burgess, and all the members of the Department of Public Safety for bringing legislation to council that would bring some justice to the stop and frisk rules. Well, the proposed legislation is definitely a step in the right direction. Tim Stevens, chairman of and CEO of Black Political Empowerment Project, and consultation with Dr. Ralph Bangs, the former associate director of the Center on Race and Social Problems at the University of Pittsburgh, who is deeply versed in these matters and has suggested amendments to improve the bill. So I'm asking that we wait on the amendments, and also to say that the Department of Justice that Dr. Bangs just spoke of in the investigation noted that pedestrian stops are many times unconstitutional. And I think that's what we want to do to improve our city, you know, to make it a city that really believes in justice and democracy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Nancy Ross. I'm a member of First United Methodist Church Pittsburgh, member of the Wrestling with Racism team, and Saving Lives, Keeping the Peace. I want to echo the previous speakers. I think all of us, white or black, should be concerned when any citizen's constitutional rights are violated by the police. We're all entitled to a presumption of innocence. Being black is not a crime. Living in a particular neighborhood is not a crime. I urge council to incorporate Dr. Bang's recommendations in the pending legislation before the council this morning. And in particular, I think it's very important that the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police record the reasons, justifications for stops. They let the citizen they're stopping know those reasons, and that demographic information is kept track of, so we have evidence in the city of how many black, brown, white, etc. people are being stopped by the police. Thank you.
Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please. Seeing no further speakers, we will move to the next order of business, which is the presentation of papers. Starting with myself, Councilman Burgess, will ask for Councilman Coghill to present on behalf of me for the Chair of Urban Recreation. Thank you very much, Mr. Coghill.
Councilman Reverend Burgess presents Bill number 442, resolution requesting and authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Management and Budget and the directors of the Department of Finance and Public Works to explore entering into an agreement or agreements with the Center for Employment Opportunities to establish a program providing employment opportunities for individuals recently returned home from incarceration.
That brings us to Councilman Coghill, Chair of Public Works. Mrs. Gross for Councilman Coghill, please. Thank you very much.
Councilman Coghill presents Bill number 427, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement or agreements or use of existing agreements between the city and Julie Gondra Jones, Naja Moon, Cameron Nesbitt, and Mikhail Owana for the creation and installation of public art at Homewood Park at a cost not to exceed $120,000. Bill number 428, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure on behalf of the city to enter into a license agreement with the Allegheny County to provide access to the city to detour bicycle trail facilities during certain city construction activities along McLean Street.
Mr. Coghill, do you have a motion to waive Rule 8 on Bill 428?
Yes, sir. Motion to waive Rule 8 on Bill.
428.
Second.
Second. All, you've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. That brings us to Councilwoman Gross, Chair of Intergovernmental Affairs.
Any papers, Mr. Chair?
Thank you very much, Madam Gross. Councilman Kraus, Chair of Human Resources.
No new papers, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. President Pro Tem. Councilman Lavelle, Chair of Finance and Law.
Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Councilman Lavelle presents Bill number 429, resolution providing for an agreement or agreements with Center for Hearing and Deaf Services, Inc. and Global Wordsmith for the purposes of providing language accessibilities and communication services in an amount not to exceed $60,000. Bill number 430, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Office of Management and Budget to pay membership dues to the University of Pittsburgh's Connect program for 3 years at a cost not to exceed $15,000. Bill number 432, resolution authorizing pursuant to Chapter 166 of the City Code, the mayor and director of the Department of Innovation and Performance to donate personal property valued at $92,639 to Computer Reach. Bill number 437, resolution adopting the reapportionment plan for the city council districts in the city of Pittsburgh as set forth in the final report of the Reapportionment Advisory Committee.
Thank you very much. That brings us to Councilman O'Connor, Chair of Public Safety Services. Thank you.
Councilman O'Connor presents Bill number 431, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Public Safety to enter on behalf of the city into a professional services agreement with Matrix Consulting Group in order to conduct a staffing and utilization study for the city's Bureau of Police at an overall cost to the city not to exceed $180,000.
Mr. O'Connor, is there a motion to waive the rules? 431. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. That takes us to Councilwoman Strasburger, Chair of Innovation, Performance, and Asset Management.
No new papers, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. That takes us to Councilman Wilson, Chair of Land Use and Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Councilman Wilson presents Bill number 433, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of city planning to enter into a professional services agreement with McKay Lounge Conservation Laboratory for conservation and preparation services for the Virgil Cantini mural location project for an amount not to exceed $351,093.
That takes us to Councilwoman Kel Smith, Chair of Hearings. I do not see any legislation from her. We will now move to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business before council? Seeing none, the next order of business is report of committee for final action, starting with Councilman R. Daniel Lavelle, Committee on Finance and Law.
Mr. President,
Thank you very much.
Councilman Lavelle presents Bill number 421, report of the Committee on Finance and Law for June 1st, 2022, with an affirmative recommendation. Bill number 379, resolution authorizing the issuing of a warrant in favor of Moria Harrington in the amount of $11,887.42 in settlement of a claim for damage to garages at the rear of 256 through 258 Grove Street from a city ES vehicle on November 11th of 2020.
You've heard the reading and title of the bill. Is there any discussion on the bill? If not, the bill is ready now for final action. All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye when their name is called. Those opposed will vote no. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Aye.
Ms. Gross?
Aye.
Mr. Kraus?
aye.
Mr. Lavelle?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor? Ms. Strasburger?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kel Smith? Reverend Burgess, Chair.
Aye.
Ayes 8, no 0.
The bill, having received the legally required number of votes, is finally passed. That takes us to Councilman Corey O'Connor, Committee on Public Safety Services. Thank you very much.
Councilman O'Connor presents Bill number 422, report of the Committee on Public Safety Services for June 1st of 2022 with an affirmative recommendation. Bill number 32, ordinance amending and supplementing the Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances Title I Administrative Article 3 Organizations Chapter 116 Department of Public Safety by adding a new section 116.17 Regulation of Pedestrian Stops by the Officers of the Bureau of Police.
You've heard the reading and title of the bill. Is there any discussion on the bill?
Mr. Pro Tem?
Mr. Coghill first, then President Emeritus Kraus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually on vacation today, but like you, Mr. Burgess. I feel compelled, almost a call of duty, to be here for any and all police reform legislation that might come my way. I first want to say what keeps me up at night and what my district is concerned about are this. Simple facts. We have 900 police officers. 300 of them are eligible to retire tomorrow. Another faction in that is we continually get other departments from outside the city continually recruit city police officers because of they're so well trained in their experience. The problem for me, or the cloud above this, is we have no recruiting class as of yet. Not one that I'm aware of. Takes 18 to 24 months to get a recruit from the time they enter that class onto the street. Our numbers are surely going to drop over the next couple of years. I think we should be focusing on, first and foremost, the recruiting class and what it's going to mean to the amount of officers that we have on the street. And another question is, are there any recruits for the recruiting class? I don't know the answers to these yet, but I know that the morale is at an all-time low, and young men and women wanting to be police officers is also at an all-time low. Another concern is the salaries. We are paying starting police officer what we're paying our lifeguards now. The pay does not warrant the job that they have to do. In order for us to retain and keep our police officers, we're going to need to up their salaries. The morale also is at an all-time low, I will tell you, just speaking to the officers that I know. I just want to go on a few concerns I have about the legislation. I agree with Dr. Bangs and Mr. Stevens. I welcome their input, as we did with this, vehicle is being pulled over, inviting them to the table. I felt it was very productive, and I like hearing, their perspective of it. And Dr. Bangs is renowned in this field, and I'm very interested to hear about the case in New York City and to see how they dropped that 97%. Another thing is, when we decide to, whether it's stop vehicles, stop and frisk, we take a fear factor away. A fear factor of drug traffickers. Drug traffickers, the only thing they fear is really getting pulled over by a police officer. Surely we will have more guns and drugs on the streets, when we enact these laws. I don't think anybody can argue with that. It's a real simple number to find. We just look at the past, say, 5 years as to how many firearms and amount of drugs were taken off the streets from these stops. In a time where this country can ill afford to contribute to keeping guns on the street, I think we should take that in account. Another thing is, this body, I don't believe, should be making laws for law enforcement. It worries me, I will tell you. I think the simple solution is this should be policy within the police department, giving the mayor the lead on it and letting him dictate what these police officers should or should not do. I will tell you, when we came out with the stop the traffic laws under Chief Schubert's direction, and you could see the stats, that it dropped drastically. And it's because it's already become a policy with them. It's as simple as, the mayor telling the police chief, this is our policy, the police chief telling the commanders, and then it's set in stone with that department. I don't feel like we need litigation to enforce this. I think we let the police department and the mayor enforce what he envisions for the future of this police department. Lastly, we should not be adopting Philadelphia laws. Whether it's the traffic stops, whether it's a stop and frisk, I don't know if you've seen the stats out of Philadelphia, but they're not good. And the bottom line is, these are two completely different cities. What might work for Philadelphia does not work for the city of Pittsburgh. And we saw in the traffic stops, I pulled the data, and we are a data-driven council, that out of 52,000 stops, we had one fatality, and that was because the passenger fired first. So you can make the argument that it wasn't needed here, to be honest with you. Again, I think this law should be more policy than it is law. I think we should be very careful when we as a council, which I don't think we have an ounce of law enforcement experience behind us, start driving laws that, without, at least on my part, not communicating with public safety. And I know, Reverend, you have communicated with public safety, and I know you told me that they're fine with this, but and that's a little bit comforting. But I like to hear it myself. I didn't have that communication, so for those reasons, I will not be supporting it today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Emeritus Cross.
Mr. Pro Temp, to address some of Councilman Coggill's comments and concerns, Councilman, you know I have the deepest respect for you. We have a great friendship, a good working relationship, but I don't know that I could be any more cross purposes with some of the comments that you made reflecting this bill. I was not going to get on this road today because first I was going to call for the recommittal of the bill because I would love to learn more about some of the amendments that are being proposed and not only to call for the recommittal of the bill, but to ask to hold 1 week tomorrow so that we can take the different amendments and different points of view under consideration before final passage. But please do not interpret that as my wavering on the bill in any way, shape, or form. I am 100% behind it. I stand committed to the bill. I will advocate my colleagues to vote for its final passage, but I am happy to have any and all discussion that needs to take place to make sure that we pass the best bill that we possibly can. So if I may, Mr. Pro Temp, yes. I'd like to call for a motion to recommit the bill, please. Is
there any other conversation that anyone else has before we ask for the recommittal? If not, you're in order.
And so moved?
No, he did make the motion. Is there anyone who wants to have a conversation before we recommit? Before I do that, if you do not mind, Mr. Cross, I want to give members a chance to chime in.
Yep, thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. I'll come back to you, though.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Mr. Burgess. I just also wanted to thank the speakers coming down, especially we just received the email from Dr. Bangs a few days ago. I actually have it printed out here in front of me, and we've been giving it some consideration, so I appreciate the sponsors' willingness to give us more time to process and to speak with the experts here and consider their input. And especially, I just wanted to thank them for physically coming down to council. It was much appreciated. That's all.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? If no one else, Mr. Kraus.
So a motion to recommit, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. The bill is recommitted. That now takes us to Mr. Coghill, Committee on Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Coghill presents Bill number 423, report of the Committee on Public Works for June 1st, 2022 with an affirmative recommendation. Bill number 375, resolution further amending resolution number 840 entitled Resolution Adopting and Approving the 2020 Capital Budget and the 2020 CDBG Program, the 2020 through 2025 Capital Improvement Program by reducing facility improvements, sports facilities by $100,000 and increasing play area improvements by $100,000.
You've heard the reading and title of the bill. Is there any other conversation on the bill? No other discussion. The bill is now ready for final action. All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye when their name is called. Those opposed will vote no. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Coghill.
Aye.
Ms. Gross.
Aye.
Mr. Kraus.
Aye.
Mr. Lavelle.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor. Ms. Strasburger.
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Reverend Burgess, Chair.
Aye.
Ayes 8, no 0.
The bill, having received the legally required number of votes, is finally passed. That takes us to Councilman Bobby Wilson, Committee on Land Use and Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Councilman Wilson presents Bill number 424, report of the Committee on Land Use and Economic Development for June 1st, 2022, with an affirmative recommendation. Bill number 190, resolution providing for the designation as a historic building under Title 11 of the Code of Ordinances, the certain site known as the Tito House, located at 1817 Fifth Avenue and 1818 Colwell Street in Uptown, 3rd Ward of the city. The owners of the property are opposed to the nomination.
You've heard the reading and title of the bill. Is there any discussion on the bill?
Mr. Pro Tem.
Yes, Mr. Kraus.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Would you, I guess, permit interrogatory with Councilman Lavelle?
Sure, if he will allow it.
Councilman Lavelle, do you have any update as to any kind of an agreement, settlement that might help us to extend the timeline for the parties to come to some kind of settlement?
Unfortunately, I do not. It appears that there's probably going to reach an agreement to keep the home, but demolish essentially the warehouse behind it. It looks like that's going to become an agreement. However, the nominator was not willing to ask that we delay the vote.
Wow. I appreciate your efforts very much. Do you have other thoughts? I don't know how to ask the question.
Vote how you feel most appropriate. And this is literally as of this morning, talking to them that there may be this agreement, but the nominator was unwilling to ask. The nominator still wants us to push forward with the vote today. And I suspect we'll probably be sued over it.
Wow. Hey, Mr. Chair, forgive me. I apologize for trying to navigate this. Is our solicitor available? I don't know if I'm out of order or not, but is our solicitor available?
He's right here. You want to talk to him? I'll bring him
yes,
to the...
please. Yes, please.
Mr. Friedson.
Dan Friedson, solicitor to City Council. Yes, Councilman Kraus.
Hi, Solicitor. Thank you very much. Yeah, as your understanding and a way to advise this council in its decision-making process, we do not possess the power to recommit and extend discussion on the bill.
That's correct. This isn't like typical legislation. You're in a quasi-judicial role here, and the law requires a vote today. Because there's a property owner objection, it requires 6 council members to vote today.
Right.
And if you guys don't vote on it today, the courts, at least the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania, will see this as a deemed denial if you don't
Okay.
vote.
Wow. Thank you, Solicitor. And Mr. Chair, thank you for permitting me to navigate my way through this process. I don't have any more comment. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilwoman Gross.
Just clarification, the report comes over from our committee last week with an affirmative recommendation. So a vote yes is a vote to support the historic nomination.
Right.
Sometimes it's reversed, so I just wanted to clarify.
Any other conversation? So I would simply say 2 things. This is the case in point of why this is a bad process. It is absolutely a bad process that we take away. We allow individuals with no interest, no money, no investment in property to unilaterally steal the property rights of the owner. It is absolutely an immoral process. I have been saying that for all the 14 years I have been here. I will introduce legislation soon. I suppose this is the time to reintroduce it. I will introduce legislation soon to do this simple thing. It's common sense to me. If the city of Pittsburgh believes that a property is so important that they're going to remove the property rights of the owner, then we should give the owner 12 months of guarantee that the city will buy it from the owner at fair market value. If we do that, then that would be if we're going to rob people of their property rights, I'm of the belief we should be willing as a city to pay them for the removal of those rights, and if they no longer want it. And so I will introduce legislation soon to do that. But in this case, that's literally, there are some individuals, maybe even a lot of people in the community, but my house is historic. Absolutely 100% historic. It is one of the first 5 houses built in my neighborhood. It is built in the 1800s. It is a Georgian. It is historic. I absolutely am chilled by the fact that somebody from Highland Park or from anywhere, somewhere outside my community who has no connection with me can walk by my house, look at it, and say, I know better than Rev what he should do for his house. And so I'm going to make it historic so he can never change it. So when I walk down the street, I can look at his house and put a smile on my face. That is absolutely not what the city of Pittsburgh stands for. We should not be doing these things. And so but this is not new for me. I have been saying this every year since I've been a member of council. I introduced legislation once, slightly different. I will absolutely now reintroduce legislation. And so that's sort of my opinion. And although I do understand there are differing opinions, and I do understand that this council sometimes has different viewpoints. Second round, we'll start with Ms. Gross and then Mr. Coghill.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Yes, indeed, we have heard this exact same speech many times, and so I feel obligated to respond in kind again and again and again. If you claim that we have no land use authority, why don't we just pack it up and go home, right? Land use authority is one of the key reasons that municipalities exist at all. It's the reason, one of the key reasons that this room exists and that we are elected. The county does not have land use authority. The state does not have land use authority. The federal government does not have land use authority. The city of Pittsburgh and the city council alone have land use authority. Zoning is land use authority. The exercise of land use authority is the reason we come here every Tuesday. And historic preservation and what we want to include in our city, what we want to protect, what we want to have where, is land use authority. You may not subvert, you are subverting the power of council by claiming that we do not have this authority. I've often heard you claim that you would never subvert or diminish the power of this council. And I request that you give that a little deep thought, because that is exactly what you are doing. When you give argument that we don't have, or that we should have less of, part of the core powers that we have as a city, you are diminishing the power of this council. So, your arguments, I discount completely. They do not stand. So what we are empowered to do, and what we should morally and responsibly do in order to represent our constituents, is consider the case in front of us. And I don't want to repeat the entire public hearing and presentation. I don't want to repeat for members all of the details. But when we so let's assume we're going to uphold the power of our authority here. When we repeatedly erase important parts of our city's identity, we are actually disrespecting ourselves and our residents. And so I also want to speak to what some of the public comment that we heard today, right? And that every single parcel is somehow, if we protect any singular site out of the 140,000 parcels in the city of Pittsburgh, 140,000 pieces of property, right? That we can't protect this one because it might actually add 14 pieces of housing, right? In the last 8 years that I've been on council, there have been more than 9,000 new units of housing built. I challenge anyone to find a more intense construction moment in the city's history. You'd have to go back more than 100 years probably. And yet all of that has been luxury housing, right? And so I hear this notion a lot, and I just heard it from these speakers, that any parcel removed from speculative real estate profiteering is somehow undermining affordability in the city of Pittsburgh. I also want to completely argue with that position, right? To completely discount that position. 140,000 parcels in the city of Pittsburgh, and also we've created 9,000 new dwelling units in the last 8 years. And yet, questioning one single parcel, we are somehow causing the affordability crisis? I think not. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to be voting to support this nomination. My conscience is certainly clear that I am not undermining affordability in the city of Pittsburgh by doing so, nor am I immorally somehow corrupting the powers of this body. I am supporting the powers of this body, and I will be voting in the affirmative.
Thank you very much. Mr. Coghill. I'm sorry, Ms. Coghill, then Mr. Lavelle.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you know, Rev, we don't agree on everything, but this is a subject that you and I fully agree on. I, like you, my home is from 1884, okay? Just post-Civil War. Certainly would qualify for historic. I have a problem with when just anybody can nominate my house to be historic. I have a bigger problem when our historic preservation comes in and tags it and asks us to support it when they don't have two nickels to rub together to put in on the process. My general thought is if you don't have the money to match that fair market value that that person is asking for, then you don't deserve a seat at the table, quite frankly. Rev, I will tell you, I've been talking to our solicitor. I also am looking to put legislation in on this because I'm embarrassed. Yes, I would like to join with you and, you know, forming something where we can't use this, as one caller said, as a tool to, you know, divert somebody from selling their home that they worked hard for all their life. And now they're going to be faced with attorney fees in order to fight it. Those attorney fees are not welcome. This is certainly an infringement on people's rights. Would never hold up in court, but we are going to force people to take 6 months, go hire an attorney at $300 or $400 per hour, take it through court, when all along all they really want to do is sell their property. Again, historic preservation, I think I'm second to none on this council. I've acted on it. Proof is in the pudding. I have my own house. I have a building. I have 2 other places that I have restored. If the original owners of my house came back here today, the only thing they would say is maybe the grass needs cut. They would think it's the exact same house. And I will tell you, it's very expensive, very costly to restore an historic home that dates back to the 19th century. So, yeah, I would like to be in on crafting. I have my own ideas on it. But also, you know, not at this time, but after we craft something, call for a post-agenda to get the Historic Commission in front of us. I question the way they act. I question the way we use them. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I look forward to the partnership, as always. And your home is absolutely gorgeous. That takes us to Councilman Lavelle.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to respond to Councilwoman Gross's comments because I disagree with part and agree with part. The last part of her comments where I just want to reiterate, because we did have people call in and argue that preserving this home would disincentivize affordable housing. And that's absolutely not the case at all. The development that's actually being contemplated to be on this site is actually for student housing. And they're considering maybe making 10% of it affordable. So what you're really talking about is a development similar to what has recently been happening in Oakland, such as the Skyview. So this in no way is about affordable housing development. So I just want to be clear about that. However, her first comments also will disagree with regarding our powers. Yes, we have the powers, of land use control, but that doesn't always mean that we're right and just in how we utilize them. We have to look further, no back than a few decades when government used that power to redline, to keep Black people from being able to purchase homes and many other things. So yes, we always have the power, but how we choose to use it is what is at stake here. And I think that's what Reverend Burgess was getting at in terms of the taking of people's property. With that, I've also struggled with this particular vote because I said it last week, I personally don't view it as historic. The HRC said it wasn't. And however, the vast majority of those that I represent have been in favor of this. And for that reason, that's why I will be voting in favor of it today, because I'm here to represent those individuals. And this is not sort of a 50-50 case where half of the community is leaning one way and half is the other way. At least for those that I represent, they're all vastly in favor of this. Thank you.
Any other conversation? Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of comments, but I mean, I'd probably vote to save all the houses in Pittsburgh. I mean, it's ridiculous. You go back and look, I mean, people just decimated all our houses, and now we're left with this, you know, with odds and ends to put together. I mean, I took a bus past this house every day when I worked in Oakland, and I looked at it and I thought, it's ridiculous that it just sits there like that. I don't think the city does enough to keep up with our vacant abandoned structures. And a structure like this is probably, you know, one of a kind along this corridor. I mean, it should be saved just like all the other structures like it. I represent historic districts. If it wasn't for people standing up trying to save these historic districts and these houses, we'd have another highway coming through somewhere else. So I think we need to stand up in cases like this.
Any other conversation? Mr. Coghill.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I'd like to save all of our historic homes too, but the question here is, it's not our home. This is not the city's property. This is a homeowner's property. Again, we're infringing on their rights. As far as our land use authority, I just choose not to use my authority to uproot somebody who's trying to sell their home at a fair market value in order so we can say we saved a house, but we don't have anybody with the money or with the resources to actually renovate the house. So the whole thing is kind of ridiculous to me, and I look forward to crafting our legislation so we can prevent this from happening in the future.
Any other conversation? I simply will say to Ms. Gross, I agree with you 100%, and fundamentally that I should not say or do anything that undercuts the authority of council. Today, I filled up my truck, and it was $128 to fill it up, even with the get-go discount, right? Because gas is so high, I'm going to stop on occasions driving. I'm going to sit on the porch. Now, I have the right to drive my car. If I decide to sit on my porch and not drive my car, I'm not giving up my right to drive it. I'm simply choosing not to use it. And so my argument today, just since you asked me about argumentation, which I take some pride in, I am not at all suggesting that council give up their authority to designate. I think council has the absolute power to designate as it chooses. I'm simply, just like my car, which is overpriced gas, I'm suggesting perhaps that this is a case where it doesn't use that authority, which is a slightly different argument than you suggested I was advocating for. But with that, seeing no other discussion, I believe the bill is now ready for final action. Those in favor vote aye when their name is called. Those opposed will vote no. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Coghill.
No.
Ms. Gross.
Aye.
Mr. Kraus.
Aye.
Mr. Lavelle.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor. Ms. Strasburger.
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Reverend Burgess, Chair.
No.
Ayes 6, noes 2.
The bill, having received the legally required number of votes, is finally passed. That brings us to Councilwoman Erica Strasburger, Committee on Innovation, Performance, and Asset Management.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilperson Strasburger presents Bill number 425, Report of the Committee on Innovation, Performance, and Asset Management for June 1st, 2022, with an affirmative recommendation. Bill number 381, Resolution amending Resolution number 540, which authorized the mayor and Director of Innovation and Performance on behalf of the city to enter into a professional services agreement and/or amendments with Planet Technologies for essential support and maintenance services for the continued operation of the city's SaaS email and data file collaboration, to increase the authorized contract amount by $99,000 to continue SaaS email and data file services from Planet Evolve to access the Microsoft library for training, reporting, and customized materials, to provide Office 365 and Azure administrative and managed services support, and provide a block of hours for resolution of Microsoft multi-tenant Azure issues.
You've heard the reading and title of the bill. Is there any other discussion on the bill? Seeing none, the bill is now ready for final action. Those in favor of the passage of the vote of the bill will vote aye when their name is called. Those opposed will vote no. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Coghill.
Aye.
Ms. Gross.
Aye.
Mr. Kraus.
Aye.
Mr. Lavelle.
Aye, sorry.
Mr. O'Connor. Ms. Strasburger.
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Reverend Burgess, Chair.
Aye.
Ayes 8, no 0.
The bill, having received the legally required number of votes, is finally passed. That takes us to Councilwoman Deborah Gross, Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs. Thank you.
Councilwoman Gross presents Bill number 426, Report of the Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs for June 1st, 2022, with an affirmative recommendation. Bill number 286, Resolution requesting the approval of an intermunicipal transfer of a restaurant liquor license from Comer Pub to the applicant Pasha Cafe for the premises located at 808 Ivy Street, known as the Pasha Cafe, pursuant to amended Pennsylvania Liquor Code 4461. Bill number 377, Resolution further amending Resolution 863 entitled Resolution adopting and approving the 2019 capital budget and the 2019 CDBG program and the 2019 through 2024 capital improvement program by reducing public safety training facilities by $808,090 and increasing major developments by $808,090. Bill number 398, Resolution further amended Resolution 840 entitled Resolution adopting and approving the 2020 capital budget and the 2020 CDBG program and the 2020 through 2025 capital improvement program by reducing public safety training facilities by $191,910 and increasing major developments by $191,910. Bill number 399, Resolution amending Resolution number 796 entitled Authorizing a Corporation Agreement with the URA in connection with the URA's application for a Redevelopment Assistant Capital Program grant of up to $1 million for the Oliver Bath House Rehabilitation Project to increase the grant amount up to $2 million and authorize spending.
Thank you very much. You've heard the reading and title of the bill. Is there any discussion on the bill?
Mr. Pro Temp?
Yes, Mr. President Emeritus Kraus.
Hey, thank you. First, I need to apologize to Councilman Coghill. He's the only member I did not reach out to speak to my desire to recommit bills. Forgive me, 377 and 398, just for further discussion and to raise my comfort level as to our transferring these monies away from the public safety training facilities. Councilman Gross and I had a rather interesting discussion about the topic. I'll say that for further conversation. And I spoke with the director of OMB, Jake Pollock, this morning. He is going to come to the table if members will support recommittal. He is going to come to the table tomorrow to argue again for the support of these bills. I just I can't, I can't seem to let go of the idea that, our almost the entirety of the challenges that we are facing in Pittsburgh as local government. It centers around public safety, and I just need a higher comfort level to say that the funds we're transferring, which as I understand it, would sort of be funds that would ignite the beginning of the project to actually start. I can't seem to let go of the idea that it really unsettles me, and I just would like to give our Director of O&B further opportunity to explain to the council why the administration believes this is a good idea, and my request that possibly funds can come from additional source to be able to do the completion of the East Liberty project. So with that, I would appreciate members' consideration to recommit 377 and 398, and then on Bill 399, once again, I just want to extend my most sincere thanks and gratitude to my colleagues for your continued support on funding for the restoration of this historic property known as the Oliver Bathhouse. And you have been very kind through the years to understand the importance of the project and to support it. I just want to again thank my members. So if there is not further comment on bills, Mr. Chair, I would like to call for recommittals of 377 and 398 if members are so inclined.
That such a motion is made. Is there a second? Any conversation on the recommittal? I will say this only, that both these bills are in my district, and it's moving from one project in my district to the other project in my district. I do support the bills and talk to Jake Pollock that it would not have a detrimental effect on the creation of our public safety campus. However, at the same time, I also want to support Mr. Krause's comfortability level and need to have his complete due diligence before supporting the bill. So I also will support this recommittal. Any other conversations? You know those conversations. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, vote no. Those bills are recommitted. The remaining bill, having been now altered, is now ready for final action. All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye when their name is called. Those opposed will vote no. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Coghill. Ms. Gross.
Aye.
Mr. Kraus.
Aye.
Mr. Lavelle.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor. Ms. Strasburger.
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Reverend Burgess, Chair.
Aye.
Aye, 7, no, 0.
The bill, having received the legally required number of votes, is finally passed. That brings us now, before I make the final comments on meetings and announcements, is motion and resolutions. Is there any conversation from members of council? If not, I do want to publicly, once again, thank Mayor Ed Gainey for the opportunity to participate in the creation of the Plan for Peace, being one of its authors, and I'm very humbled by that request and grateful to participate. It is my and our most mature thought of a comprehensive and coordinated plan to reduce gun violence in the city of Pittsburgh and to promote peace. But after Friday, after I went home that weekend, there was the shooting in the South Side. And I also think that as we move forward, we have to, and although it is certainly consistent with the plan, but we need to take specific action for the nighttime economy. But in my spirit, what really upsets me is the death dealers in this country, the gun manufacturers and the Republicans who support them are the death dealers of our country. They are creating death. There's a direct proportion to the amount of guns on the street to the amount of death in our community. It is scientifically irrefutable that we are the only developed country in the world that has this problem with gun violence, because we are the only country in the world that has over 300 million guns on the streets, and today's armament is scary. These kids have assault weapons. Many of these kids underage have guns with extended clips and buying adjustments to make their guns automatic from semi-automatic. They are better armed than our police. And although we will do everything we can as a municipality, and it will work, we will reduce violence some. But those who allow these guns to flourish so that our kids in schools are shot, our kids riding bikes are shot, our kids at parties are shot, our kids walking down the street of a nighttime venue are shot, the responsibility ultimately is laid at the gun manufacturers, their lobby, and the Republican Party of this state and of this country that are their lackeys. And underneath this gun craze of our city is the almost quiet belief that there's going to be a race war and replacement theory, so do not fool yourself. Underneath this explosion of guns is this sick and twisted racism that has been a part of our country, and now it's finding its full throat and breath in Trumpism and in the Republican Party, where they say guns, and they want to make America great again. Back to the day when there was legal segregation. Make America great again. Back to the time when there were slaves. Make America great again when there were laws banning women's right to choose. Make America great again when women feared their lives because of sexual harassment in the workplace and there were no protections. Make America great again where gay and lesbian and trans people have to live in fear. That's what they really mean. They make America great again means make America white and male again, where only they have power and significance. I am more ready to fight this fight than I have ever been in my life. I thought I wanted to kind of ride off the scene, but I'm not so sure. Someone has to say enough is enough, no more guns. And I'm old enough and long enough in my tenure that I do not care about the retribution. Having guns, having assault rifles in a major city is dealing death, pure and simple. And anyone who says differently has a different agenda. I pray for the families of those who are shot. I pray for the families of those who do the shooting. The Fudge Factory, I believe, Fudge Factory on Carson Street was one of my favorite places on Carson Street. It's probably the only place on Carson Street I went to shop regularly because I love their fudge. And they are closed because of gun violence and because they're making a decision not to put their employees at risk. But this is not the way a civil society should operate. And those death dealers, we did a war on drugs and locked up black people with pride. But there is no activity to have a war on the death dealers who are responsible for the death of our children in schools, on street corners, and in neighborhoods. And there's something wrong with a country that lets this occur. I'm sorry for that moment. I just had to get that off my chest, and this is the venue in which I'm allowed to do that. Any other conversations?
Yeah, Mr. Pro Tem.
Yes, Mr. Krause?
Yeah, thank you, if I may. Just would like to add that I had a very, very productive conversation with Mayor Gainey, with Chief of Staff Gainey, and with Public Safety Director Lee Schmidt about, we all know the problem and the frustration that I share with many people is the retelling of the problem and not allowing for space and time to discover solution. And so I'm very solution focused on how to solve the problems, not just for this moment in time, but for long term. So again, the mayor invited me into meeting this morning. It will be a standing meeting that he and I will have along with others every Tuesday morning at 8:30. And again, just would like to say how very productive it really was. And there are some other things taking place. I'm not quite at liberty to release them now because they are really under the mayor's purview. I wish to give him the opportunity to announce and release those as he sees fit. But there'll be further conversations today as to, again, not revisiting the problem again and again, but understanding how to craft solution to correct the problem. And so just wanted to add that to you for all those that are listening. I hate to say this, but Monday is the very worst day of the week for me. I spend Monday speaking to constituents and media outlets. Yesterday was a typical Monday for me. I got my first call at 7:05 yesterday morning, and I put the phone down about 6 o'clock last night. So I don't know how many hours that is, 13 hours or something. I never left the phone. That's what I did, was to intercept calls from worried constituents, worried business operators, and media outlets. I know we all want to see an end to it. I know we all want to see an end to it, but exactly how to get there is really the challenge before us. So appreciate the mayor's really appreciate the mayor's willingness to engage, and I was very, very much encouraged by the conversations that we had this morning. So just wanted to put that out there. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time, and I'm looking forward to the day that I can come here and offer up all the positivities of this wonderful historic Southside neighborhood. Thank you.
Any other conversation? Seeing none, we'll go to our meeting announcements this afternoon at 1:30. Council will hold an in-person executive session relative to pending legislation. Tomorrow, Wednesday, at June 8th at 10 a.m., Council will hold their standing committees meeting. Speaker registration will close at 9 a.m. Wednesday morning. Also at 1:30, Council will hold a cablecast public hearing on Bill 291 as it relates to a conditional use application for the development at 300 6th Avenue. Speaker registration will close 12 p.m. Wednesday afternoon. To register to speak at these meetings and hearings, please fill out the sign-up form on the council meeting webpage by the deadline. You may also call the clerk's office at 412-255-2138. And finally, I'll entertain a motion to excuse the absent member, approve the minutes, and adjourn the meeting.
I moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. We are adjourned.